Yellow Vest protesters have gathered in Paris and other cities for a fifth consecutive Saturday of demonstrations. Protesters defied a government call to suspend the action following Tuesday's attack on Strasbourg's Christmas market, where a gunman killed 4 people. However, fewer people turned up 66,000 altogether, officials said, compared to 125,000 last Saturday. The movement, initially against a rise in fuel taxes, now addresses other issues, including education reforms. 7 people have died in the Gilets Jaunes Yellow Vest protests so far, the latest in an accident resulting from a blockade by protesters on Friday. About 69,000 police have been mobilized across France to prevent a repeat of the violence of previous weeks. In Paris, slightly more than 2,000 took to the streets on a cold and rainy day, compared to 10,000 last week. Police stopped and questioned 168 people in the capital, detaining 115. Scuffles broke out on the Champs-Élysées several times during the day, with police using tear gas and water cannon. However, as night fell, the iconic boulevard was reopened to traffic. 7 people were injured. Some museums were closed, but both the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower remained open. In Bordeaux, more than 400 protesters took to the streets. Police had to use water cannon to disperse them. A similar number protested in Toulouse. In Nantes, some 100 protesters saw rounds of tear gas fired at them. Similar scenes occurred in Avignon and Brissac. In Calais, a group of Yellow Vests blocked the access road to the port. Analysis by Hugh Schofield, BBC News. Paris. A few hundred desultory figures in yellow vests wandered up and down the Champs-Élysées. Occasionally there are whoops and cheers, followed by a bang and a bit of gas. A group of protesters have got too close to a police cordon, and a show of force pushes them back. The mini panic lasts about 15 seconds. That is about the extent of the 5th Yellow Vest demonstration, which confirms the downward trend of last Saturday. Maybe the troublemakers will enter the game like they did last week, but it cannot be on the same scale, because today there simply are not enough bona fide protesters around to give them cover. The Gilets Jaunes who have turned out seem to be the hardline left-wing element. There is a lot of talk about the Rick Citizens Initiative referendums. This is a demand of the far-left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and a long way from the Yellow Vests' original call, which was for a simple cut in fuel tax, long since conceded. The movement, or at least the Saturday protest movement, is shrinking and hardening. The impact of the demonstrations has been keenly felt. In France, the government has been forced to bow to pressure and adjust its economic course. President Emmanuel Macron responded to the nationwide street protests by scrapping an unpopular fuel tax rise and promising an extra $114 a month for minimum wage earners and tax cuts for pensioners. However, it is far from clear that he has done enough to diffuse public anger. The protesters adopted the name after a social media campaign urging people to take to the streets wearing the high-visibility yellow jackets that must be carried in every vehicle. In France, they were initially protesting against a rise in duties on diesel, which is widely used by French motorists, and has long been less heavily taxed than other types of fuel. Mr Macron had said higher taxes on fossil fuels were needed to fund renewable energy investments. But protests have also erupted over other issues, including calls for higher wages, lower taxes, better pensions, and easier university entry requirements. The movement is calling to highlight the economic frustration and political distress of poor working families, has widespread support. parents of a teenage boy who took his own life have complained after their Catholic priest criticized him at the funeral for killing himself. Father Don Locusta in the service questioned whether Mason Halliburger
18
would enter heaven, horrifying his parents and family. The Archdiocese of Detroit have relieved Father Locusta from funeral duties, but the family want him fired. Catholicism has traditionally taught that suicide is an unforgivable sin. Only recently have the Church said that extreme psychological stress could mean forgiveness for those who take their own lives. Mason, from Temperance, Michigan, took his own life on 4th December. His parents Jeff and Linda Halliburger sought the help of their priest, Father Locusta, before the funeral. We wanted him to celebrate how Mason lived, not how he died, Ms. Halliburger told the Detroit Free Press. But the priest used the service at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Catholic Church to attack their child. He was up there condemning our son, pretty much calling him a sinner. Mr. Halliburger said he wondered if he had repented enough to make it to heaven. He said suicide upwards of 6 times. The appearance at the funeral, against their wishes of their son, his football coach, who reportedly bullied Mason and his brothers, added to their pain. A statement released by the Archdiocese of Detroit said Father Locusta would not preach at funerals for the foreseeable future, and apologized for what happened, but the family want him removed from his post to stop him upsetting others. We are afraid that, like the Catholic Church does, they will send him off and he will do it to somebody else. Mr. Halliburger said, if you have been affected by any of the issues in this article, there is help available. You can contact the Samaritans on 116 123 in the UK and the Republic of Ireland, and if you live in Northern Ireland, you can call Lifeline, a 24-hour helpline on 1800 and 8800 and 880. Here is a list of organizations that may be able to help at BBC. Code UK Action Line. As Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke is leaving his post at the end of the year, President Donald Trump says, in the latest high-profile departure from his administration. In a tweet, President Trump thanked Mr. Zinke for his service, saying he had achieved much during his tenure. He said he would appoint a new Interior Secretary next week. Mr. Zinke, an ex-Navy SEAL and a former Montana congressman, has been embroiled in allegations of ethics violations. They include a land deal in Montana involving Mr. Zinke and the chairman of Oilfield Services Halliburton, Politico reported. Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke will be leaving the administration at the end of the year after having served for a period of almost 2 years. Ryan has accomplished much during his tenure, and I want to thank him for his service to our nation. End of Twitter post by @Real Donald Trump. The Interior Department oversees federal land, including national parks such as Yosemite and Yellowstone. Mr. Zinke has faced scrutiny over expensive trips in a sparkless helicopters and on private jets. Costly alterations at his department also came in for criticism, including reports that 3 sets of double doors in his office were being upgraded at a cost of nearly $139.
0001100.
He later said he had negotiated the price down to
$75 000.
The New York Times has also published a guide to the investigations into Mr. Zinke. According to the newspaper, he is facing scrutiny for blocking a Native American casino expansion after meetings with lobbyists opposing the plan, and for possible breaches of the Hatch Act, which stops federal employees from influencing elections by using their office. Mr. Zinke has promoted oil drilling and coal mining, and worked to roll back environmental protections brought in under President Obama. Chuck Schumer, the Senate is most senior Democrat, was blunt in his condemnation. The swamp cabinet will be a little less foul without him, he tweeted. Ryan Zinke was one of the most toxic members of the cabinet in the way he treated our environment, our precious public lands, and the way he treated the govt like it was his personal honeypot. The swamp cabinet will be a little less foul without him. End of Twitter. Posts by @SanSchumer advocacy groups have accused Mr. Zinke of being in hoc to corporate polluters, and many welcomed his departure. Jamie Williams, president of Conservation, drove the Wilderness Society, said he feared what he called the J. Larry Weir policy would continue. He said, "Unfortunately,